Hello and welcome to this very special broadcast. I'm Desi Nuskas. Now, since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic, many Desi Nuskas have been floating around on social media, on WhatsApp forwards as well, as a cure for treatment for COVID. But there is just no scientific evidence to back any of these claims. Please do not believe them. Doctors warn that they are not only dangerous, but some can even be fatal. So hence, please trust science over quackery. Let's begin by taking a look at some of these ludicrous claims that are making rounds that you should just not believe. Most of us have received WhatsApp forwards and come across some social media posts. There are claims that treat and cure COVID, and doctors sincerely hope that you're not falling for any of them and only are trusting science over such form of quackery. One self-styled godman recently propagated good vibrations to keep COVID at bay. The fact is, you cannot fall for any of these and follow COVID-appropriate behavior of washing hands, using sanitizers, social distancing to prevent COVID. Some forwards make vaccines look like villains. Please do not fall for these and get vaccinated. These forwards, some rather hilarious, even claim to treat COVID through homemade nuskas. Doctors warn they do more harm than good. For instance, onions with rock salts do not treat COVID, and neither does inserting lemon drops in your nostrils. If your oxygen levels are running low, call for medical assistance. Some of these myths floating around of making people with low oxygen levels inhale camphor and ajwain are ultimate forms of quackery, warn the doctors.
We do not want a person, for example, whose oxygen saturation drops to stay at home and smell camphor so that his saturation goes up. This is a complete myth. Please believe in your medical fraternity and doctors and stop believing in unscientific remedies.
While yoga is good for overall well-being, it is not an emergency go-to when a patient's oxygen saturation levels are dropping. While many politicians have been talking about the power of cow mutra, please remember it is nothing but a great fertilizer. It neither treats nor prevents coronavirus.
I request you not to fall for these myths around prevention and treatment of COVID, which do more harm than good. Trust science, trust verified sources, and more than anything else, trust the medical professionals.
Doctors warn some of these can also be fatal, and hence only trust a qualified healthcare practitioner. For prevention and treatment of COVID, ultimately you will need care from a certified and qualified healthcare practitioner, and in some cases, hospitalization too. All these myths can cause complications, they can delay your treatment process, that can ultimately also in some cases prove to be fatal. So be wise. Trust science over quackery. In New Delhi, Desi Nuskas for India Today. And joining me on this special broadcast, Science Over Quackery, I've got Dr. Nandita Iyer, the author of Everyday Superfoods, and Dr. Prateek Samdani of Breach Candy Hospital. He's a frontline COVID warrior. Thank you so much, both of you, for taking the time out and joining us on this broadcast. Let's begin, Nandita. Dr. Nandita, your Twitter post has taken the internet by storm. I have to say, I was laughing away with some of the myths that you mentioned that were floating around. Let's first start, without wasting any time, with some of the most hilarious and popular myths. Number one, onions with rock salt can cure COVID. Shatter the myth for our viewers.
I guess, see, onions have a slight antibacterial property and, it's good for overall health, but definitely not something that people should be promoting as a prevention or a cure for COVID, because it's highly misleading.
Absolutely. And Dr. Samdani, many people are showing vaccine hesitancy due to these WhatsApp forwards, showing fatalities linked to vaccines. Also, many forwards going on to say, don't get vaccinated if you're menstruating. There are just too many people who are falling for these claims, turning into vaccine naysayers. They're getting scared, thinking twice about going and getting that jab. Explain to us whether everyone above 18 should vaccinate or not, and why. Let's have science prevail.
The only way that we can overcome this virus, I feel, is getting everyone above 18 who's eligible to get vaccinated. Menstruation or any other natural physiological process is absolutely a no contraindication for vaccination. So women, men, boys and girls, please go ahead and get yourself vaccinated. Otherwise, we will lose this battle.
Right. And, what about the vaccine hesitancy? Dr. Prateek, there are certain forwards that are saying, oh, there is a fatality that has been linked to this vaccine. This person died and that person died after taking the jab. So don't go ahead. All of this is a lobby of the pharmaceutical companies. There's just so much floating around right there, Dr. Prateek.
Vaccines are the only way to prevent you from getting a serious infection and leading you into the ICU. Vaccine hesitancy has been there for ages, and it's a complete myth. If you do not get yourself vaccinated, you are higher and more likely to fall yourself a prey to this COVID-19. So please go ahead, prophesize what is science, and vaccines are there for the last 100 years. They've saved hundreds of lives and thousands and millions of people alive here around the world. So this is absolutely a myth that vaccines will kill you. No vaccine has killed anyone. Whatever little study that we've had with one of the vaccines saying that it causes increased thrombosis is now buried. There is no link to thrombosis and the vaccines. So go ahead, vaccinate.
Right. Dr. Nandita, there's another myth that says putting lemon drops in nostrils can kill COVID. It's another one, I guess, outside of spoiling the inner lining of the nose, it doesn't do much, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And, there was another report that said that someone died because they put in the lemon drops. I don't trust that either. I don't think it can kill anybody. But the problem with this is that, when people believe in these kind of misinformation about prevention, that may just keep them in a false sense of security, and they may not really follow the prevention methods that actually work, like mask, social distancing, and, using sanitizers, keeping your hands clean, etc. So mainly masks. So I think due to these kind of myths and misinformation, it should not let people forget the actual things that work.
You so rightly put out masks, social distancing, using sanitizers, and of course, washing your hands as well. Dr. Prateek Samdani, is there any other alternative to masks, sanitizers, social distancing? All these prevention nuskas floating around on WhatsApp forwards, on Facebook posts, somebody is putting up on some other social media handle. Can they really prevent, outside of these 3 proven ways to prevent COVID and contracting the virus, can you prevent it?
Chaiti, nothing else can prevent us from getting this infection besides keeping a physical distance, washing your hands, as you correctly said, and wearing your mask correctly above your nose and below your chin. And I call this COVID-inappropriate behavior. The only other fourth thing that can actually prevent us is vaccination. Yeah. So it's time for everyone to go ahead and get yourself vaccinated also. And don't believe in any other myth that's floating around. These nuskas can actually give us a tuska when this virus enters like a muska, and we don't want this to happen.
That's a good way of putting it, Dr. Prateek. Does steam inhalation with essential oils treat COVID? One of my friends recently said, she was down with COVID and she's like, I kept taking essential oils and steam. What's your take to all these kind of myths that are floating around? Too many WhatsApp forwards also are making rounds to this effect.
See, steam is nothing but something that will help certain symptoms like, congestion or excessive mucus in the throat, which could happen during COVID. But it's just to relieve the symptoms, and it's definitely not going to prevent and definitely not going to cure COVID. And reports of these mass steam inhalation camps, even in a recent report said that Mangaluru police was doing that. I think that just increases the risk terribly because of the aerosols that can spread around, and definitely mass steam inhalation camps should be, totally avoided, and use this as just to relieve the symptoms, but definitely not as anything else.
Dr. Samdani, what is this whole fad with essential oils and preventing and treating COVID with it?
Well, essential oils will certainly aromatize your environment and your home. It will do nothing to kill the virus. It will give you a feeling of well-being, but it will not prevent you from getting COVID-19. So oils are meant for just enjoying the fragrance rather than preventing the virus from entering your nose. So go ahead, but do not use it as a possibility to prevent COVID-19 infection. In fact, there have been some case reports, and this is really stunning, that you can actually get convulsions if you use essential oils.
Oh my God, that's very, very scary. So one has to be very, very careful of these myths that are floating around. Dr. Nandita, one self-styled godman recently said that good vibrations are going to be keeping the virus at bay, conveniently forgetting that mask, sanitizer, social distancing, like we just discussed, are the ones that are preventing COVID. And many people think that they're being spiritual and the virus is not going to affect them due to the meditation that they're doing and the good vibes that they're maintaining.
I sincerely request all godmen and all famous personalities to promote the scientific and verified things like masks and social distancing, wearing masks properly, like Dr. Samdani said, because they have such a huge following and who just listen to everything they say. So I think they should use their mass appeal to promote the right things and definitely not things which, may put people at risk.
Absolutely. Dr. Samdani, some people have started snorting camphor and ajwain and making potlis out of them and sniffing them to improve their oxygen levels. Isn't this absolutely dangerous when a person's oxygen saturation levels are dropping? Shouldn't one call an emergency helpline right away? What do you have to say about people even propagating? In fact, recently, Dr. Prateek, you will not believe it, saw a couple of social media influencers put out these Desi Nuskas and camphor and ajwain nuskas, and it just took me by surprise, because when you have a patient who's really ailing and the oxygen levels are dropping, one needs to call a doctor.
Hetty, if you're hungry, you need food. If there's a fire, you need an extinguisher. Inhaling camphor, ajwain and other remedies is not going to help your oxygen levels come up, for heaven's sake. You need oxygen. Call the helpline, rush to your center, or use oxygen if you have it handy, and not do these so-called home remedies at that moment.
And just to add, I think we all see the scramble for oxygen beds and ICU beds on Twitter especially, right?
Yeah.
So I think when people waste valuable time when their oxygen is dropping into these unverified remedies, that oxygen bed may progress to an ICU bed and then a ventilator, because the more the oxygen drops, the more the level of care and, intervention that is required. So, this may seem funny, but it's actually so dangerous.
It is dangerous because you're wasting valuable time sniffing camphor and ajwain and potlis when you actually require either an oxygen concentrator, or you require to be hospitalized with a ventilator perhaps, or an ICU for that matter, as you rightly pointed out, depending on what the doctor decides. Now, Dr. Nandita, this is my favorite. You recently tweeted how these herbal mouth and nose sprays do nothing but leave you smelling like garam masala. Do any of these even have a bleak chance of killing COVID?
Internationally, there are some mouth sprays in which they're doing some clinical research. They contain some active ingredients like trypsin, which is said to provide a barrier as well as be a disinfectant and kind of arrest the progress of the virus. But definitely using herbal ingredients, possibly they do have certain active ingredients that work, but unless a clinical trial has been done and the trials published and the results of the trial published, making such talking about these products that they help prevent or cure is just unethical in the first place.
It is absolutely unethical in the first place, and thanks for clarifying that, because people will be scrambling to get hands on these sprays that are available in different, I've seen them myself in different medical stores as well, herbal sprays with a mix of all these herbs claiming to prevent COVID or cure COVID, and thank you for that particular clarification as well. And as you rightly tweeted, it does nothing but make you smell like garam masala. I love this one, I have to be honest. Dr. Prateek, your take on cow dung and gav mutra for COVID treatment. There are some politicians who have recently said that it is very effective. Nandita recently clarified it's nothing but a good plant fertilizer.
I will go with what Dr. Nandita scientifically says. So cow dung and gomutra, just embrace the holy cow. These are not antivirals. These are great fertilizers. Use them in the field and not inside your nostrils.
Right. Dr. Nandita, explain proning to us. There's too much misinformation about pranayam being a go-to if the oxygen level suddenly drops. Again, is this something that we need to conveniently ignore, like sniffing camphor, ajwain and all these herbal potlis?
See, definitely yoga and pranayam have their role in, overall well-being, and that's when you are in good health. But once somebody is suffering a disease, and that too something as serious and sometimes fatal like COVID-19, resorting to these kind of everyday wellness measures is definitely not an emergency measure. So trying to take deep breaths or do pranayam in an attempt to increase the oxygen levels, again, losing valuable time, and someone who could be settled over an oxygen bed may end up needing a ventilator.
So what is the scientific go-to, Dr. Samdani? Now, these days, what we've seen is that it's very tough to lay hands on an ICU or an oxygen bed. We've seen these cries on social media of people scrambling to get it because the hospital infrastructure is overburdened. When a person's oxygen level is dropping, of course, you will call your doctor, but immediately what can we do for the patient? Is proning a good option, or do you have any other options? Could you please walk our viewers through these emergency care that one can adopt at home, which is scientifically proven?
Excellent question. So there are 2-3 things that you can do. One, don't lie flat when you're breathless or when your oxygen level drops. Lie upright or keep a backrest and go at least 30 to 40 degrees upright. This will help your lungs get more oxygen. The other thing is, as Dr. Nandita was saying, do a proning posture. Proning means simply sleeping on your stomach. So what this does is it improves the volume of the lung capacity and helps more oxygen go in. But there's a little riddle here. When you're doing proning, make sure you've not eaten or had any solid food or lots of liquid for at least 2 hours before you do this, for there's a chance of a reflux and aspiration. So until you get to a hospital, prone yourself or sit upright and use oxygen and monitor your saturations.
All right. So that's a very good tip coming in, and proning is something which is effective. It is scientifically proven, and you heard it from one of the top doctors today who's treating COVID patients on how to practice proning. Dr. Pradeep, no one is judging anyone who likes to enjoy a drink, but to say that having a drink every day kills the virus, how true are these claims?
Let not alcohol enjoy you. Alcohol is there for you to enjoy alcohol. So alcohol does nothing. On the contrary, you may get drunk, have inappropriate behavior, fall down, injure yourself, or get more prone to getting COVID-19. Moreover, people who are alcoholics or drink alcohol on a regular basis and in large quantities have been more difficult to fight this infection, God forbid, when they get this infection. So no, no, and no.
And you know, somebody was arguing with me the other day who actually believed this particular myth, Dr. Nandita, and I want to bring it to you. They said, oh, if the sanitizers also have to contain 70% alcohol and that's the alcohol that is killing the virus, then why can't I drink it? Perhaps it will, help my oral hygiene as well. What do you have to tell them, Nandita?
I think people are blurring the divide between jokes and reality, and what keeps getting forwarded as a WhatsApp joke becomes a serious conversation. Absolutely ridiculous. And I think anybody with, even a baseline level education should know that this is nonsense.
And Dr. Pradeep Samdani, there's a claim that says spraying alcohol and chlorine helps COVID. So you spray it all over your body and it'll kill the virus. What do you have to say?
The virus enters from your nose and not from your clothes. You have soft mucous membranes in your body, the lip, the nasal passage, and your eyes. You're only going to injure and cause burns and irritation. This will not prevent you from getting COVID-19. So it's absolutely a myth and useless.
Dr. Nandita, I also want to address one very important point. We've seen so many of these myths floating around. There's so much misinformation which is floating, and of course we are doing our best to allay all these myths and put facts on the table, scientifically explain to people what is right, what is wrong. Where does one stop this? What does one do? Because there is this influx of WhatsApps and social media posts that are doing round. How do we stop this?
I think scientific communication is an area which is very weak in India, and given that a lot of our population is below poverty line, they don't have access to any kind of healthcare. So for them, even approaching a hospital is like a scary proposition because it's too expensive, it's beyond your reach. Even if they can reach a hospital, so it just becomes easier for them to believe these kind of things. And also, scientific communication in general tends to be talking down to people who don't have that kind of education or privilege. So that just distances them more from accepting science, accepting these verified truths, and they rather believe something that's, being forwarded, or it just comes
Yeah.
a word of mouth. And I think definitely we need to tailor the communication depending on whom we are trying to reach out to. We can't possibly have the same communication in urban and in rural areas, because it has to cut through different levels of conditioning and privilege. So I think that's also the onus is on the government and the other educated people to trickle it down in a proper way to the masses.
Dr. Pradeep, one net takeaway that I'm understanding from both of you is that while all these nuskas that are floating around cannot treat or cure COVID, some of them perhaps, and would you believe, can be used prophylactically, that is in a prevention way, or do you think even that is all something which is not backed scientifically?
So, Chaiti, some of them can be used as a prophylactic way to improve, for example, your lung function, to improve your strength, to improve your overall vitality, so that you could fight any infection in future. But I don't think any of these can actually really prevent you from getting COVID-19, except physical distancing, hand washing, masking, and vaccination.
Right. And Dr. Pradeep, what do you have to say about scientific communication, which is somewhere lacking, and people who are falling for all these myths? How do we strengthen the scientific communication today?
I must congratulate you to get such a program on air so that you can clear the myths of the country. The best ways, of course, read scientific, listen to scientific. So media has a big role. Print media, visual media, or radio, these are methods of communication that can actually percolate through masses. And you must get absolute scientific material and make sure the people listen to scientific material rather than giving an anecdotal example of a patient who did one of your chuskas and muskas and got out free of COVID, which is just could be the natural history of COVID.
That's a very important point. Dr. Nandini, would you advise our viewers that when they come across all these nuskas, please verify this with a doctor before applying any of these, because A, they can be dangerous, 2, they can delay your treatment, 3, in certain cases, as Dr. Samdani mentioned, can be absolutely fatal too.
Yeah, I think we just need to keep hammering this information that trust verified sources, trust your doctor, and, don't fall for anything that just comes floating around on the internet, because it's literally not verifiable. So trust what your doctor says.
Dr. Samdani, there are a lot of self-styled godmen, etc., who are also big influencers, who are giving a lot of tips, and all those tips are something that people easily believe because they have a huge following. How can one really shift the myth from the fact and distinguish between what is myth and what is scientifically backed prevention or treatment for COVID?
So there could be 2-3 problems with these so-called godmen. 1 is lack of knowledge, 2, incorrect advice, and 3, just propagating what they feel so that they can gather more people. So 1 is, of course, I think there must be a way that we can pin down such people who give wrong advices to the country. So they need to be, either they can be handled on a more manner that is, probably not criminal, but even not a more scientific and a legal manner. The other is, put hoardings in and around them and tell them these are the things to do and not these. I think you can really influence them and kind of give them banners and some liners to say that this is this. But these godmen, their job is to give you faith. Their job is not to give you scientific advice. So only listen or have or believe in faith if you have to listen to them, but not any medical or scientific advice.
And also, I would like to say, at the end of the day, when your condition deteriorates, you will find yourselves in the hands of a doctor. You will not find yourself in the hands of these politicians, yoga gurus, self-styled godmen, or any of these people who are floating these WhatsApp forwards around claiming that they really prevent or cure COVID for that matter. And hence, listen to what the doctors today on the broadcast have said. Dr. Nandita Iyer, Dr. Prateet Samdani, thank you for clarifying all these popular myths as well. Let science always prevail under quackery, because tomorrow, when you really require care, it is these doctors who are going to come to your rescue. With that, I thank you very much for joining us on this particular broadcast. Thank you to all our viewers for tuning in as well. This is Jayati Narula signing off.